Hello! Back to our spreadsheet with our candy corn guesses. If you're just joining us, in the last video, we calculated mean, median, and mode. Those are our measures of central tendency. So over here, we talked about how to do this in a few ways. The purpose of this video is to start interpreting these values. And also, before we even start doing that, I'm going to show you how to copy over values in Excel. Excel can be a little picky about how you copy and paste things. So I went ahead and put all of the things that we've calculated, I went ahead and put them all in this table that we had started in the very first video where we were analyzing this data. So to compile them, I think it's easier to look at and kind of interpret things. So if I go over to the measures of central tendency, if I wanted to copy these over into that table, if I highlight them, so click and drag, I can hit Control C or right click and go to copy. Either of those work. And then it'll add that moving cool border. You can come back over here. Now, if I'm going to copy and paste these here, I wouldn't hit Control V, it will change the values. Notice, whoa, doesn't like that. So let's not do that. Coming back over here, these are still copied. That's another thing. Sometimes Excel forgets what you've copied pretty quickly. So make sure that's still copied. Okay, back over here. Right click here. And notice again, I've shown this in a different video, there's different options for what to paste and how to paste it. And notice a lot of these change the values or don't input things. See, that didn't, yeah, don't show it again. Okay, so what we can do here, let's go back over, make sure these are copied. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and copy them. Copy, okay. If we right click and use this one, it says values. What that means is it's not copying over the formulas or functions. It's literally just copying over the number that is displayed. So notice when you do this, it pastes the mean correctly as 428.73, the mean as 344. If I move my mouse, it'll take it off, but in that area. Okay, so it copies these correctly. Whereas if you hovered over any of those other ones, you would see it doesn't copy that number, it copies a formula or a function, which changes which cells it's referencing on this sheet. So that's why it's important. If you're going from sheet to sheet and you just really want that number, then you can paste it in that way. Okay, so this video we're really focusing on calculating, I'll say an estimate for the mean using a relative frequency table, and then interpreting the mean, median, and mode. So let's go ahead and do that. We've learned in our class to calculate the mean using a grouped relative frequency table. This doesn't give us an exact value for the mean because, as we've seen in previous videos, what a grouped frequency or grouped relative frequency table do is it groups a bunch of guesses, in our case, because these are candy corn guesses, into one bin. So for example, here there are 9 guesses between 100 and 199. But if we weren't, imagine that we don't have this data set. We have no idea where those 9 guesses fell. They could all be 110. They could be very evenly spread out between these values. We have no idea. So if we're not given a data set, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and hide. This is a good chance to show you how to hide. I'm going to hide this so that we don't get distracted. You can unhide it. That doesn't delete it, to clarify. I'll show you if you highlight like A to C, right click, you can go to unhide again. But for now, let's leave it like this. All right, we're trying to find an estimate for the mean, and then we're going to kind of see how close it is to this. So our midpoint here, remember the midpoint of our intervals is the average of the endpoints of the intervals. So here our midpoint would be 100 plus 199 divided by 2. So that would be our midpoint, considering these are our endpoints of this interval. So again, the midpoint is finding the average of those endpoints. Okay, so this is the midpoint of this interval. I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these, and then we'll come back. Okay. All right, so I've calculated the midpoints of all of these. So just to verify with you, for example, we have found the average here of 900 and 999, which is 949.5. Okay. In our other videos with grouped relative frequency tables, the way that we have talked about finding this estimated mean, so again, because we don't exactly know where these data points fall, if we're not given the original data set, then we're estimating things. This is all an estimation. So the idea here is that we're estimating on, if we were to average all 9 of these guesses, if we were to average all 9 of these, we're hoping it's pretty close to the midpoint of this interval. So if we were to average all 9, we're hoping it's pretty close to this value because it's the middle of this interval. In fact, let's go ahead and just, I'm going to unhide this for a moment and just check that out. So the 9 guesses between 100 and 199 are these. Oh, and look at that. The average of these is 143.33. And we're assuming that the average is about 149. So we are off, but we're not that far off, okay? And that's the idea, is that we're estimating things without knowing that data set if we didn't know it. Okay, hide again. All right. So what we're going to do here is take the midpoint and multiply it by, I'll say the quickest way is by the relative frequency. And that's how I kind of instructed y'all, is you can totally do this by the frequency. There's several ways, but for timing's sake of this video, I'll show you the most efficient. So if we take, I'm going to go ahead and make this formatted. Okay. All right. If we take the midpoint, and I'm going to reference cells here because this is going to allow us to do this very quickly. So I'm going to take the midpoint of this interval and multiply it by the relative frequency. Okay, so when we do that, what we're doing is essentially weighting. So in a way, like giving a weight to how much this value is going to account for in our mean. And so it's going to account for about that much in our mean. Okay, if you remember, Excel is so sweet because now that I've self-referenced these, what this cell is doing is saying, take the cell that is 3 to the left of me, multiply it with the cell that is 1 to the left of me, and then give me that value here. So what we can do is hover over the bottom right. Remember, our little cursor changes to a thinner plus sign. You can click and drag, but I will also introduce now, in a lot of cases, if you are next to a column that already has data, it kind of assumes you want to work with that whole column. So you can click and drag from here, or you can double click. So again, you can click and drag. That's one way to do it. Or you can double click. Haha! Amazing. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and round these so they look nice. Okay, so we're not done though. These are just essentially weights that are going towards the mean. So the way we find the mean is finding the sum. We have to add all of these together. So what we can do in Excel is use the equals sum. It adds together values. So we're going to sum together all of these. And ta-da! That's our estimated mean. So I'm clarifying, this is not the actual mean. We have found the actual mean because we have the data set. But if you're given a grouped relative frequency histogram or a grouped frequency histogram to where you could find the relative frequency of each of them, then you can calculate it this way in Excel. Okay, are you ready for this though? Because your minds are about to be blown. We can do this with one function. So right now we made an entire column here and then added those up, but we can do this with one Excel function. This is my favorite Excel function of all time. I'm really excited to share this with you all. Okay, my favorite Excel function is sum product. So our estimated mean here, we're going to get the exact same number as 435.864 when we do this. Okay, what sum product does? In fact, maybe I'll scroll down so that you can see the sum product. I'm going to move myself. I'm just so excited. Okay, sum product returns the sum of the products. I'm just going to point out what we had done a moment ago. We found a bunch of products right? We multiplied the midpoint to each of the relative frequencies. So we found a bunch of products. That's what that means. We multiplied. And then we added them together. So we found the sum of a bunch of products. Okay, so here's how we do this. Sum product. And then here it says array 1, array 2. So what Excel is expecting is that what our inputs are like highlighted data. So array 1, what you're going to highlight is your midpoint column. So your entire column, it's saying take all of these values, and then if you put a comma, so I put a comma there, highlight your relative frequency. So what this is doing is it's saying take both of these columns, multiply them like pairwise based on which row we're looking at, and then add all of that together. Y'all, I'm so excited. Are you ready to see? Okay, here we go. Ah! It's the same number. It just simplified that entire process. So again, to remind you here, we found the product of the midpoint and the relative frequency, copied and pasted that formula to all of these, and then we added all of those together. But what the sum product does is it takes these two arrays or these two columns and then multiplies them together, adds up each of those individually. I should say it multiplies them pairwise, adds all of those products up, and then gives you that number. Excel is so cool. Okay. I will pause here because this video is now getting a little long. I think I got excited about stuff. But in the next video, we're going to talk about variance, standard deviation, z-scores. And then in the final video for this module where we're learning these concepts through our candy corn guesses, I'll do a summary video where we kind of analyze all of these things together. But before I finish, I do really want to point out kind of a quick interpretation of the mean, median, and mode. Again, I want to point out how close this was. Our real mean is 428.73, and our estimated mean was 435. So it was a pretty good guess. At some point in the semester, we'll learn how to say how close. How close was that mean guess? Okay. The median is 344. So we found this in another video, but remember what that means is this is like smack dab in the middle of the data set. And the mode, I'll say in this case, doesn't have much weight because the data set was almost all unique guesses, and 340 was the only guess that was guessed twice. So the mode in this data set is not super relevant in terms of measures of central tendency. But the mean and the median, remember we've talked about this, the mean and the median, we can relate to one another to think about the skewness of the data. So notice here the mean is greater than the median. So the mean is greater than, I'm going to use this one. The mean is greater than the median. In our Canvas course, I've pointed out that if you write it that way, like the mean is greater than the median. So if you write these words in this order, the way that that inequality points, so that arrow right now is pointing to the right, is the direction that the data is skewed. So if we very quickly jump back over to our, for example, our histogram, we can see that this data is skewed right. There, like the tail over here, it's pulling over to the right. So this data is skewed right. And I just want to point out, we can see that by comparing the mean and the median also, because the mean is larger. What that means is those values that were higher guesses are pulling that average away from that center of the data set. Okay. That's it for this video. Thank you so much. We'll be back soon.